Tonight, reversing course, Ontario Premier Doug Ford backpedals and scraps his controversial plan to open the Greenbelt. The sudden U-turn over protected lands.
It was a mistake to open the Greenbelt. I am very, very sorry.
Closing the door on developers after mounting backlash and scandal. India hits pause on visas for Canadians, sending tourists scrambling.
Their problems shouldn't affect people live in Canada.
We definitely want to visit our family.
The new blow as Canada cuts its diplomatic staff in New Delhi over threats to safety. Plus, a cross-country mission capturing hearts and helping minds.
The motto I've had through all of this is many small steps lead to big outcomes.
10 provinces, 10 triathlons, one memorable cause.
Woo! Go, Steph, go!
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. One of Canada's highest-profile premiers attempted to cauterize a festering political wound today, confronting a scandal that many insist has corroded the credibility of his government.
We moved too quickly, and we made the wrong decision.
Ontario's Doug Ford, who vowed in 2021 not to open up the Greenbelt to housing development, but then did, admitted today that decision to do so was a mistake and is changing his mind again. It comes after months of angry backlash, an ongoing RCMP review, and several resignations. CTV's Heather Wright leads us off tonight with Ford's mea culpa and whether it will cost taxpayers any money.
A stone-faced Doug Ford walked to the podium this afternoon trying to put an end to a seemingly never-ending scandal.
I made a promise to you that I wouldn't touch the Greenbelt. I broke that promise. And for that, I am very, very sorry.
An apology nearly 11 months after the Premier decided to open up protected land for development, a process Ontario's Integrity Commissioner called rushed and flawed, and the Auditor General called biased in favor of certain developers. Her report found that up to 92% of the land could be tied to just 3 developers with access to the Housing Ministry.
As a first step to earn back your trust, I'll be reversing the changes we made and won't make any changes to the Greenbelt in the future.
It's a stunning about-face for a government that has consistently defended its Greenbelt decision, despite mounting backlash that has resulted in the resignation of 2 cabinet ministers and departure of 2 staffers. Housing Minister Steve Clark resigned earlier this month, and this week the Minister of Public and Business Service Delivery, Khalid Rashid, stepped down after giving contradictory information about a trip to Las Vegas that included a visit to the spa with a developer who owned land removed from the Greenbelt.
Once that emerged, I mean, it was crystal clear. This was a government that couldn't necessarily escape the idea that there was corruption occurring. And Doug Ford simply couldn't tolerate that.
The Ford government removed protection from 3,000 hectares of Greenbelt land last fall, insisting it was needed to build more houses, something its own task force says was not. Overnight, the value of that land ballooned, with developers set for an $8.3 billion windfall.
Every day, there's another turn in this scandal. This doesn't end here. Who in the government tipped off developers?
With today's reversal and apology, the Premier hoping to turn the page.
We're going to have to wait and see whether or not Ontarians are in a forgiving mood. There was a sense that there was some backroom dealing that was done that was not above board, and I think that had a lot of traction with the public.
It's not clear how much this Greenbelt about-face will cost or what penalties the government may have to pay. The Premier would only say his housing minister is looking into it, and those numbers will be made public. Omar.
All right, Heather, thank you. There are also growing calls to release the intelligence the Prime Minister says may link India to the murder of a Sikh activist in British Columbia. The accusation has created a diplomatic schism that today got even deeper. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver on the Canadian travelers now caught in the middle.
The tense diplomatic dispute is only getting worse. Security is being beefed up at Canada's consulates and the High Commission in India, while staff are being sent home due to the online threats leveled at Canadian diplomats.
We call upon the government of India to take seriously this matter and to work with us to shed full transparency.
The Prime Minister says Canada is safe, but India rejects that, alleging today that security threats at its diplomatic offices in Canada have impacted day-to-day operations so much, all visa processing is being suspended. And that's creating chaos and confusion at visa processing centers.
We're Sikhs, right? So I think it's just very scary to go back.
I think it's going to escalate. Let's hope this resolves soon and doesn't go beyond this. This was an extreme move.
Canadians represent roughly 5% of all foreign travelers entering India, which pre-pandemic came out to more than 300,000 people arriving every year. All of them need a visa.
A lot of Canadians do have family living in India. Other than that, there's a lot of business activity that's happening in the recent past between Canada and India.
This latest tit-for-tat response follows a travel advisory yesterday warning Indian citizens to be extra vigilant in Canada.
And they all booked way in advance, like 6 months, 5 months in advance. And they're all in limbo right now.
Maninder Singh owns a Montreal travel agency that specializes in India. He says the move couldn't come at a worse time for business. It's busy season with the climate in India more moderate this time of year.
We barely survived this the pandemic thing. And a couple of months started to look good and we started to make progress. And suddenly we have invested big time.
Today, Justin Trudeau reiterated that Canada has what he calls are credible reasons to believe that an agent of the Indian government was involved in the killing of a BC Sikh leader. But he refused to release any evidence, Omar, saying he will let the justice process unfold.
All right, Annie, thank you. Another man with connections to India has turned up dead in Canada just hours after being named on an Indian most wanted list. Yesterday, India's National Investigation Agency released photos of 43 people it calls gangsters and Khalistani terrorists, noting that some of them live in Canada. Less than 24 hours later, Sukhdev Singh Gill, number 33 on the list, was shot dead in Winnipeg. CTV's Manitoba Bureau Chief Jill Makashon with the investigation.
In this quiet Winnipeg neighborhood, what appears to be a targeted murder. Neighbors say they saw 3 masked men fleeing this duplex Wednesday morning and heard a vehicle squeal away. Sources tell CTV News inside the house, Sukhdev Singh Gill was found shot to death. The 39-year-old man identified as a gangster turned Khalistani terrorist by Indian security officials. Indian media call him an extremist who's been living in Canada since 2017. Neighbors are also now learning who the dead man was. Locals say several young men moved into the house at the beginning of September. This man and his roommates live in the home beside the crime scene. They were questioned by police about the homicide.
We didn't heard anything. There's a gunshot and you didn't heard anything. I said no.
This crime now making international headlines as tensions between Canada and India are at an all-time high. And now a new volley of accusations by Indian officials against Canada.
As a safe haven for terrorists, for extremists, and for organized crime. And I think that's a country that needs to worry about its international reputation.
The specifics of what happened here, why Singh was killed and who did it, now the focus of a Winnipeg police investigation. But security experts say there will likely be national and international interest in the outcome.
It would be a local investigation if we were talking, I'll say, the pre-Nijar, Mr. Nijar world and the Prime Minister's disclosure the other day. I think CSIS in particular would probably be more than curious in the circumstances, just to rule out whether there's any external participation.
Winnipeg police are asking anyone with information or video surveillance to come forward. No arrests have been made. Omar.
All right, Jill, thank you. Volodymyr Zelensky arrived late tonight for his first visit to Canada since Russia invaded Ukraine. Zelensky will address Parliament tomorrow and then visit Toronto to meet with Canadian business leaders. Earlier today in Washington, he met with U.S. President Joe Biden, who's facing resistance from Republicans as he seeks $24 billion from Congress for military and humanitarian aid for Ukraine. For now, Zelensky will have to settle for the $325 million package Biden announced today.
And together with our partners and allies, the American people are determined to see to it that you do all we can to ensure the world stands with you.
This came as Russia launched its largest missile attack in more than a month in cities across Ukraine. At least 5 people were killed. An investigation into unmarked graves in BC has revealed at least 158 child deaths linked to residential schools. Researchers with the Stolo First Nation say there's been a lack of access when it comes to obtaining historical records, and so far have only reviewed a fraction of the 70,000 documents.
One child died because they were jumped on by another student. Another child was reported to have hit their head against the bed under unknown circumstances. And another was reported to have broken their spine while jumping rope.
Researchers have also collected oral testimonies from survivors who shared stories of physical abuse, starvation, and secret burials. The province of Alberta is considering pulling out of the Canada Pension Plan, releasing findings of an independent study today into a Made in Alberta solution.
According to their analysis, an Alberta pension plan could increase benefits for seniors, reduce premiums for workers, and protect the pension interests and benefits of all Albertans.
The report estimates Albertans would save more than $5 billion in the first year by moving to a provincial pension plan. The Premier says they'll consult with taxpayers before possibly holding a referendum on the issue. Coming up, the end of an era for a media empire. The complicated legacy as Rupert Murdoch steps down at Fox, plus tackling a surprise career move.
I feel good about it, and I'm in peace with it.
An NFL star makes a trade. There was a deadly crash on a New York State highway today involving a bus carrying high school students to a band camp. 2 adults were killed and 5 other passengers were critically injured when the bus tumbled down a 15-meter ravine. Dozens of students were also hurt.
But there's a lot of families that need some love tonight. And we extend that from 20 million New Yorkers who all know how much we cherish our children, our adults, our band leaders.
Officials believe a faulty front tire may have led to the crash. Rupert Murdoch, the Australian media titan who created Fox News and became a divisive force in America, is stepping down. Chris and Adjkate on the 92-year-old's controversial 7-decade career and the challenges for his successor.
Rupert Murdoch is stepping down as leader of both Fox's parent company and News Corporation after more than 7 decades. The 92-year-old will now become chairman emeritus with his son Lachlan Murdoch at the helm.
I don't know that he has the, just sort of the gravitas, if that's the word, of Rupert.
In a statement to their employees, Lachlan Murdoch said of his father, "We are grateful that he will serve as chairman emeritus and know he will continue to provide valued counsel to both companies." The transition takes place at a very tumultuous time. Earlier this year, Fox News paid $787 million to settle a defamation lawsuit on its coverage of false claims following the 2020 presidential election. The company's stock has also declined with investor anxiety over the loss of viewers and various other lawsuits. Still, some experts say Fox will remain on top in the U.S.
They are back to having stability. That may be one of the reasons that he decided to leave at this point.
Rupert Murdoch was a true media mogul. Starting with a single newspaper in Australia, he would go on to buy the British tabloid News of the World in 1969. He then created the Fox Broadcast Network in '96, later owning the Wall Street Journal and New York Post, and once owned the rights to Marvel Comics and National Geographic.
Got plenty on my plate.
Even the writers of HBO's critically acclaimed Succession have said publicly that the show is loosely based on the Murdoch family.
They have become a kind of emblematic of a hard-nosed, brass-knuckle, tough, even ruthless brand of business operations.
Rupert Murdoch vows he will still keep a critical eye within the company and provide support wherever needed. Chris Nanchkate, CTV News, Halifax.
Still ahead, racing to shed light on a disease that darkens the mind. A daughter's run for her mother and a cure. A Toronto woman is racing from coast to coast over 5 months to outpace a debilitating disease that devastates hundreds of thousands of Canadian families. The Endurance Challenge is a way to celebrate a loved one. CTV's Scott Hurst with the story.
Woo! Go, Steph, go! 10 provinces, 10 triathlons. Stephanie Fauquier is racing for a cause very close to her heart.
And I wanted to bring awareness to this issue, and so I decided that I would race across Canada because it's not just an Ontario issue, it is a Canada-wide issue.
A campaign dubbed Race with Steph, raising awareness and money for Alzheimer's research to honor her mom.
The motto I've had through all of this is many small steps lead to big outcomes.
Dr. Robin McLeod is an officer of the Order of Canada, a distinguished Canadian and a globally recognized surgeon for her contributions to general surgery and academic research throughout her career, now living with the harsh reality of an Alzheimer's diagnosis.
This is a terrible disease.
The annual cost of dementia to the Canadian economy and healthcare system is more than $10 billion. Close to 600,000 people were living with dementia in 2020, and that number is projected to balloon to close to 1 million by the end of the decade. There is no cure, but Alzheimer's researchers at University of Toronto, the recipients of Stephanie's fundraising campaign, believe better treatments are within reach.
We're tackling some of the worst medical problems confronting Canadians in the term of neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's disease.
Tell us about the significance of your race jersey.
Yeah, this is really special.
More than 500 kilometers later, $300,000 raised and counting, and Mom was there every step of the way.
I raced with a picture of my mom's Order of Canada, and then my favorite picture of the two of us, and I actually think I look quite like her.
A finish line for now, but just the beginning of Stephanie Fauquier's journey.
I'm celebrating this one.
You should.
I feel very proud of myself.
To shed light on a debilitating disease. Scott Hurst, CTV News, Toronto.
A Canadian NFL star is trading his cleats for a stethoscope for a second and final time.
Laurent
Duvernay-Tardif is retiring from the NFL after 9 seasons, including a Super Bowl championship with the Kansas City Chiefs. The offensive lineman and McGill Medical School grad was widely praised for opting out of the 2020 season to volunteer at a long-term care facility at the height of the COVID crisis.
Being able not just defining yourself as a football player has really served me well in my career.
Duvernay-Tardif says he will continue to pursue his medical career in Montreal. Many talents. After the break, slipping and sliding back home, a second chance for 6 malnourished marine mammals. Marine mammal experts from the Vancouver Aquarium are celebrating the successful release tonight of 6 harbor seals. Some were rescued as babies after being abandoned. CTV's BC Bureau Chief Melanie Nagy gives us a first-hand look at a momentous return to the wild.
Rolling up to a BC beach. A van carrying special cargo. Not just one harbor seal, but 6 shuffling about in special crates, each one rescued by a dedicated team from the Vancouver Aquarium.
So these seals were separated from their moms for a variety of different reasons.
Lindsay Ackhurst is one of the marine mammal experts who has been caring for the seals since they were brought to the aquarium earlier this year.
When they're coming in, they're only a few days old. They're usually dehydrated, malnourished.
The rescue program, which gets a lot of help from volunteers, is one of a kind in Canada. For decades, it's been rehabilitating animals so they can return to their natural habitat.
Seeing all of the seals just grow at a pace where they can be released back into the wild, it's really heartwarming.
This little guy is affectionately called Acorn. He was only 10 days old when he was found without his mom after people got too close.
Many of these animals are coming in because of humans. They're getting separated potentially because of busy beaches.
After 3 months of medical care and nutritional support, Acorn is strong enough to head out to sea. So too are the others, who are all fitted with biodegradable tags to keep them apart. While at first some are reluctant to leave, it doesn't take long before they're freely swimming in the salty water. In total, 66 harbor seals will be released this fall. Thanks to the rescue team's care and commitment, they'll be back in the ocean where they belong. Melanie Nagy, CTV News, Richmond, BC.
Great to see them going back home. And that's a snapshot of this Thursday for all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Good night and see you tomorrow.